Welcome to Yeukai Business Show, UK's premier business show where we feature business thought leaders, high achievers, and industry experts. Today's episode is brought to you by World Outsourcing Solutions Limited, a company that specializes in helping executive business owners with virtual assistant services and business growth systems. Here's your host.
Hello everyone and welcome to the show. It's Trevor Stockwell here with you on this episode. And today I'm joined by our guest, Cris. Now, Cris is a globally recognized thought leader on innovation strategy, leadership, and culture. He helps CEOs, Fortune 500 companies, and governments solve their innovation challenges. He's also the author of the book, Building a Culture of Innovation. And there's a really interesting topic that I'm going to talk to him about now. So welcome, Cris Beswick.
Hey, how are you doing?
Glad to have you here. I'm looking forward to this conversation, definitely, because I think it's so vital that business owners, however large or small an organization's leadership, understands the importance of innovation. Otherwise, they become dinosaurs and die, don't they? So, but we'll jump into that shortly. Maybe first of all, share a little bit about your story or your journey that's brought you to where you are today.
Sure, no problem. So, the culmination of everything for me is a journey from the design industry, where I spent several years as the founder and the CEO of a group of companies in the design industry. I was really fortunate, and we talk about having the mythical cats have 9 lives. I was incredibly fortunate I sold my whole group 6 days before Lehman Brothers crashed in 2008. So I jokingly, so the deal took 9 months. So it's a true story. The deal took 9 months to put together. So from the start, from December 2007, January 2008. And I actually signed with the lawyers to sell the whole group on September the 9th. And Lehman Brothers crashed on the 15th. So I jokingly, back to the 9 lives thing, I jokingly say I used all my 9 cats' lives up with that one signature on that one day. So why is that important? At the time, I thought, okay, I'm going to exit this industry. I've sold a group of companies, and I actually didn't know what I was going to do next. What turned out was around 2009, 2010, innovation in its current form started to become a really important topic in the boardroom and with CEOs and senior teams. And what I've managed to do, I've been very fortunate to have a second career, I suppose. What I didn't realize at the time was that decade in the design industry, helping solve problems, solve challenges, create new solutions, but also being the leader in an organization like that has set me up to work with CEOs and leaders in corporates who now need to understand design and human centricity and how to use empathy and design thinking and all those things, ultimately to become more innovative. So to either drive innovation, to drive growth, or to build innovative cultures in their organization. So it's been about a 20-year journey to get to this point.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds an interesting journey, but also, you've lived it first, so you now know where the CEOs are coming from, the challenges that they have, don't you?
So so not just CEOs, but entrepreneurs. So, as a serial entrepreneur, I can completely empathize with the entrepreneurs out there and we will all, as entrepreneurs, we all go through these stages. Entrepreneurship has been glamorized over the last sort of 10 years, but the true side of entrepreneurship is that only a few of us really make it. Yeah. And even fewer of us make it really, really, spectacularly big. And the true side of entrepreneurship is a journey that most of your listeners will know, and maybe are right in the middle of what can sometimes be what I refer to as a sausage machine. So I've experienced entrepreneurship. I've been there, 2:00 in the morning in the spare room of my tiny little house with my head in my hands thinking, how the hell am I going to pay the mortgage this month? And then right up to the end of owning a very successful group of companies, and being in a very, very different position. I understand what it's like being an entrepreneur, and I also understand what it's like being a CEO and the different challenges that CEOs face. So that experience, that background has served me really well for the work that I do now.
Yeah, definitely. So what would you say some of the challenges to innovation would be, from maybe a small business right up to a large organization? Is it the same issue, or do you find that there's different elements?
So the irony is small companies want to be like big companies, and we now have big companies that want to be like small companies. So, big companies want the speed and adaptability and the agility that smaller companies have.
Yeah.
But smaller companies lack the capital and the bandwidth and the resources and the reach and things like that, and the access to markets that big companies have. So what the challenge is always, a friend of mine shared a great phrase with me the other day, and it's specifically appropriate to small businesses and entrepreneurs. You've got to make fire with the wood that you have. And I think as small businesses, or even medium, SMEs and entrepreneurs, a lot of the time we can get caught up with thinking too much about the things that we don't have and that we see maybe bigger corporates having, and therefore that's why they're able to do things. And we forget that typically, look at the situation we're in now with the past 12 years. Smaller businesses have had their challenges in the same way as bigger companies have, but smaller, more entrepreneurial companies are much more able to change direction and to change pace and to quickly build and test new business models and new propositions. So the challenges are often the same, but from a different perspective. The thing that's common across all of them is today more than ever before, we have to be purpose-led. We have to genuinely have a core purpose, a raison d'etre. Like, why do we exist as an organization, and what do we fundamentally want to achieve? And if we can really cement that, specifically for SMEs and entrepreneurs, if we can really cement that, that sets the tone and the basis for everything else. It sets the relationship you have with customers, suppliers, with employees, with being able to attract talent and build great cultures in your organization. So I think, there's lots of similarities and lots of differences, but the core one for me is genuinely being able to articulate a purpose in an organization. That's one of the big foundations for leadership, culture, everything.
Yeah, no, that's good. The foundation is kind of why, isn't it? Why am I doing it?
Yeah, why do we exist? What's your raison d'etre as an organization? And if you make decisions where you sense check everything you do against that, is it in line with that purpose? Will this allow us to deliver against why we exist?
Yeah.
Then it's always a good measure of whether you're doing the right thing. And that goes for, a first-time entrepreneur right up to, the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar corporate.
Yeah. In some ways, the larger organizations are more susceptible to distancing themselves from the original purpose of why they started, because profits have got involved.
Yeah.
Or you get set in your ways of, this has been working for 10 years. This is obviously the way forward. And it can be a trap, can't it, that we don't learn to innovate enough, and we just keep kind of churning out the same product because people buy it. And then
purpose creep
comes along, and we're left. So would you say is staying innovative, is that the biggest challenge that you see within the small and the large organizations, or is that kind of more of a symptom of something else?
So one of the challenges is, and this has been compounded over certainly the last sort of 5, 6, 7 years. One of the challenges is the bastardization of the word innovation and of the whole subject. So we've had if I look at my industry, one of the main industries I work in is the management consulting space. So if I look at my industry, over the last 5, 6, 7 years, there have been, globally, there just must have been millions and millions and millions of people who've overnight become an innovation guru and an innovation consultant. And the challenge with that is we saturate the corporate environment with, in many cases, consultants or self-professed experts and self-professed gurus. And if you combine that with the fact that innovation as a subject is quite difficult for a lot of companies and CEOs and senior leaders to understand, we've seen just mass instances of poor advice. So poor consultancy, poor provision, and mismatches between what a corporate or what a company really needed, and in many cases, what a consultant could provide, not necessarily whether that was the right thing for that particular client. And then we've also seen that bastardization of the word has devalued it. So everywhere we look now, everyone's innovative. There's innovation in every company's strap line. The word itself has become so overused that we've devalued it. The core thing, the reason why innovations became so popular, and still is when you frame it in the right way, is the core thing organizations need to do, whether it's a first-time entrepreneur or, an Amazon, for example, is stay relevant. And innovation really, and building that innovation capability, genuine capability to innovate, is purely around staying relevant. Now, relevance means at the very, very minimum, your organization stays trading and it stays alive. It doesn't have its Kodak moment. It doesn't die. But also it means better than that you're driving growth and you're doing really, really cool, amazing things. But the fundamental thing every organization needs to do, first and foremost, is stay relevant. Because if you're relevant, then your business will still be alive. And innovation is about being able to maintain relevance in a changing world and with changing clients and changing needs and shifting societies and all of those things. It's about maintaining relevance and then being able to build that innovation muscle to not just stay relevant, but to then drive growth and prosper and etc. So innovation really is about staying relevant.
Yeah, that's really good. It's very apt. Yeah. As you were talking about how words get bandied around, I was thinking of agile and just that's kind of moved so far from the fundamentals. It's the buzzword, isn't it? Has been for a while. Until the next one comes along and there'll be something else.
So that's interesting. So we've just created that. So myself and a group of other, I don't know, whatever label you want to give people like me, gurus, thought leaders, experts, authors. I don't mind what label I have, but there's about 25, 30 of us, led by a guy called Ludwig Melich, who runs an innovation software company called Planbox. And he kicked off a piece of work probably about 3 or 4 months ago called the Future Fit Manifesto, which basically takes everything that the Agile Manifesto outlined 20 years ago, and we've redesigned it and reframed it for 2020 or 2021. Yeah. And it's called the Future Fit Manifesto. So it shifts all the values and principles of the Agile Manifesto and makes them more relevant to the world that we operate in today. So anyone can check it out. And it's relevant for that first-time entrepreneur, that SME, or global corporates. It's called the Future Fit Manifesto.
Sounds good. Yeah, definitely. I hadn't heard of that, so I'll investigate that afterwards. So what would be, because you mentioned about culture, you mentioned about leaders need to be kind of empathetic, amongst other things. I know culture change can be a challenge, whatever size the organisation. Yeah. What would you say would be, maybe people listening to this thinking, we know what our why is, but we've got stuck in our ways. We need to innovate. We need to define what that change is for us, how we need to adapt. But then for the team and for the employees that then need to suddenly embrace, we're doing something different now. How do you help kind of CEOs or bosses navigate the initial starting of momentum to get that shift going?
It's a good question, and that's always the difficult one. The first thing for someone like me is to have a really inconvenient conversation, right? And the inconvenient conversation is to try and establish, and I'm talking more from a corporate lens now as opposed to an SME or an entrepreneur lens, but that inconvenient conversation is a very, very frank conversation about whether or not that corporate, i.e. the CEO and the senior team, genuinely want to change as much as they think they do. And what I mean by that is, if we take innovation as a subject, what typically unfolds is a CEO and a senior team, and this is the phrase I use, they will want what innovation delivers, but they're very, very rarely prepared to do what it takes. So, they want the spoils and the trappings of, well, if we had a culture of innovation and we had a proper innovation ecosystem and system and framework and strategy, wow, we would be Apple-esque, right? We would be flying like the Apples and the Amazons of the world. And then the inconvenient part of the question is then to lay out for them, okay, this is what it's going to take, right? If you want to model yourself on organizations like that are pioneering the way in culture, in leadership, in mindset, in growth and revenue, then here are the things that you will need to recreate. Here are the things that you'll have to model. And invariably, that's where the conversation takes a different turn, because it's a bit like anything, to get to that level, so many ingredients have to be in the pot, and the ingredients have to be the best quality. I'm using a food analogy, but the ingredients have to be the best quality ingredients you could possibly get your hands on, and that conversation can be quite inconvenient for senior teams because they don't realize just how much it takes to build a culture of innovation and to build performance at that level. But there are companies out there, and we work with companies that when we migrate through that conversation and they say, this isn't a choice, right? One, we have to do this. And because we have to, we will do, we need to do this. Therefore, if that's what it takes, that's what we have to do. And we have, we're redesigning at the moment, but we have a whole pre-qualification process where if there's even any sense that a client doesn't want to work at that level, then we just politely decline the work, because it will only end in one way. And typically when you're in the consulting space, it will end in, well, we brought Cris and his team in and we spent, $1 million, and 12 months down the line, it failed. And it will always only be our fault, right? So we're very, we're very selective, but for good reason, because it doesn't do them any good and it doesn't do us any good. But it's not difficult to build a culture of innovation and to build that level of innovation capability and an ecosystem and all those things. But it is hard work. And that's what most senior teams don't recognize enough of.
Yeah, it's changing a mindset, isn't it? I would have thought above all else to start with.
The biggest challenge for me, and the majority of my work, is working with managing directors, leaders, so senior directors, CEOs, boards, and predominantly it's all about mindset. How do we build a growth mindset in them? How do we help them unlearn a lot of the things that they may have been taught through their management and leadership career, and then learn new things that are now more appropriate to the world that we have to operate in, to the culture that an organization may need in order to survive and thrive? to the new demographic of, the latest generation of employees want different things from their leaders, from people higher up in organizations. So fundamentally, yeah, it is a mindset shift. And the majority of my work is helping senior execs shift that mindset to one where innovation becomes a natural byproduct of how the organization operates.
Yeah. It sounds to me, and you're more the expert on this than I am, certainly, but it sounds to me that, I guess, in that hard initial conversation you have and you lay out the price it's going to cost to get anywhere worth going, there's a price to it, isn't there? And
the price is less a fiscal price. The price is, here's what you're going to have to do.
Yeah.
So here's what we'll need to change. The best way of describing it is, here's what we'll need to change. If you want to go from here to here, here's this. I'll lay out what we'll need to change. A big component of that. So one, the amount of stuff that needs to change is often a surprise, and some parts that need to change, it's often a surprise how much they need to change.
Yeah.
But the biggest challenge for senior leaders, and we are addressing this around the world globally now, but the lack of diversity, not only of gender, but of mindset in senior teams and boards, is still a challenge. So the typical board that I will deal with, our senior executive team, is still my age. So they're, middle age, typically white men.
Yeah.
And we've probably all come up through our career path in quite a similar way. And we've all been on management courses and leadership development courses with business schools. But it hasn't prepared many of us for the world that we actually find ourselves in today. So the biggest shift, the biggest change is in how leaders need to lead. And that's the biggest chunk of work that I do. It's helping senior execs and leaders understand what they need to change before their organizations can change, or before they can then enable their organizations to change. Yeah. That's the biggest challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. It's keeping the appetite to grow, isn't it? I think personal development, continually growing, even when you're successful, when you've hit a certain target, you've reached a goal that you wanted to. That's not the point when you then set your next goal, is it? You should be thinking further ahead and mapping out plans, goals to get you to that second step.
So this is why Satya Nadella at Microsoft has been so successful with growth mindset. So rolling out the growth mindset approach across Microsoft, and they haven't pioneered growth mindset, but they've pioneered rolling it out across a very dense, complex global workforce.
Yeah.
And it's a really good case study on shifting the mindset and shifting the approach and shifting the time frame by which senior leaders think. So from short term to long term thinking. It's really interesting, and a lot of work that I do is around that. With a specific lens on how do you use that mindset to drive innovation across an organization. It's really important.
Yeah, and I guess in lots of ways, like when the workforce is younger, maybe naturally they're more open to new ideas. They see things quicker a lot of times than maybe the older generation. No disrespect to anyone at any age, but what I'm thinking is, I can imagine a leader of a larger organization or someone that's been in business for many years, they're suddenly listening to this thinking, I know I need to do something, but it's going to be so tough to bring everybody on board. But actually, it's more likely that everybody's waiting for you to get on board. They're all keen to offer their ideas, given the opportunity. It's just a lot of the time, it's the C-suite that doesn't necessarily ask the lower levels of the organisations for input, for advice, for direction as to how they think things should go. So,
well, what's typically happened over the last, certainly over the last decade, when innovation has become more prominent, is you've had what I call organisational cry wolf. So 10 years ago, an organisation said, right, innovation is absolutely vital. We now need innovation. And what typically happened was, in the early days, they then said, so all of our 10,000 employees, give us your ideas. We want your thoughts. We want all your ideas. And what happened in the first sort of phase of this was all those employees said, cool, okay, yeah, well, we need to do this, and I've got this, and I've spotted this, and I think I've got an idea for doing this, and we should be offering customers this because I know that's a problem. And then the organisation went, oh crap, we haven't got a strategy, we haven't got an innovation process, we haven't got any budget, we haven't really thought this through. So all of those ideas, all that latent creativity and all that energy, and no one had any feedback, and I'm paraphrasing and generalizing, but typically, all those ideas went into, what 10 years ago was described as, the metaphorical, the idea box, right? And they never came out. And no one got any feedback, and no one knows what happened to them, and no one ever saw any idea come to fruition. And then it all fizzled out. And then 2 or 3 years later, that same company gets a consultant in, like me, or not like me because I'm one of the good ones, but like one of the other ones that I was describing before, right? And innovation's back on the agenda again, right? And here we go again, and innovation's important. And you can only do that a couple of times before employees go, oh, here we go, we've got another innovation consultant in, and innovation's on the annual strategy again, and they want, and I actually can't be bothered. Because I call innovation is about challenging the norm. It's about creativity. It's about wanting to come up with new and different and powerful and valuable ideas and solutions. And all of those things are what I call the willing contribution, i.e., you can contractually make your employees turn up on time. You can make them do a certain amount of hours. You can make them perform to a certain standard. You can make them sit, professional body certifications. You can do all those things. You can't contractually make them be creative. You can't contractually make them give you the ideas and the creativeness and the thoughts and the solutions that are in their head. They have to willingly want to give that over to an organization. And unless you've got great leadership, unless you're purpose-driven, unless the culture's great, and unless they are absolutely bought into driving innovation and doing really cool stuff, you don't get that. Yeah. You don't get that willing contribution. And that's part of the challenge. And when the organization has had innovation on its agenda 3 or 4 times over the past decade, that willingness rapidly dissipates because the organization's cried wolf too many times. Yeah. And that is one of the big challenges in corporate today, because, the organization's not crying wolf anymore. It's desperate for innovation, for creativity, for new ideas, new business models. And their culture isn't sufficient and isn't sufficiently switched on and engaged and willing to contribute. And that is one of the biggest challenges in the corporate world today, that they now need innovation, whereas they thought they needed it several years ago and asked for it because it was cool and it was trendy. Now they desperately need it. It's an absolute vital component of survival or even being able to thrive. And most organizations have switched off and disengaged employees. Therefore, that willing contribution's not even on the table.
Yeah. It's like we're going to have another staff survey about this, that, and the other. It's like, great. Yeah, done all that before, nothing happened. It really is like, it's the leader's responsibility to manage communication well with regards to, this is why we're in business, as we said at the start, this is why we exist, this is what we want to do. But then also we're asking for your input because blah, blah, blah. But then it's building that trust that, okay, if I tell you my good ideas, you're either going to embrace them or you'll at least tell me that you thought about them, you read them, you discussed them, and then actually thought it doesn't fit yet, maybe it's something that will fit into the strategy going forward.
Yeah.
It's all
constant
about,
feedback.
Yeah.
Constant feedback. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's just about, that's a component of building a great place to work. It's a component of building a culture where innovation. So, the strap line to the last book I wrote talks about placing innovation at the core of your business. Now, if you place something at the core of your business, it means everything around it, the processes, strategies, framework, communication, all of those things are all like a spider's web. They all connect into the core. Yeah. And unless you do that, innovation just becomes another thing over there that we're being asked to do. Yeah. And we all know that old phrase, what gets measured gets done. And if innovation isn't at the core of a business and it's not fully embedded and integrated, then it will always sit over there on the outskirts as well. The business wants us to innovate, and it wants creativity and new stuff, but I get measured on how many boxes I pack every hour. Yeah. So the metric that I work to is that. And, if I get time for some innovation, then maybe. But until I'm measured on it, until the business shows me that, I need to get on board with innovation and not focus on the KPI that's driving my pay packet, then it will always be another thing.
Yeah. That's really good. It's all interlinked, isn't it? Like you say, the challenges with culture and the importance of building the right culture, authentic leaders, the right sort of communication. Going back to the fundamentals necessarily, if that's the case where you've lost your way a bit, but also, am I willing to change as a leader? Am I willing to admit, hey, the last couple of years have been a bit sparse because we've lost our vision, or we've got happy looking at our bonuses, and suddenly things moved on and we're not where we need to be. I think from what I hear you're saying, and for people out there, I think there's advantages either side, isn't there? If you're a small business, like you said, you can be quicker to adapt. It's kind of like a large organization is a bit like an oil tanker, that if it needs to turn around, it takes a fair amount of time. Whereas the smaller boats, vessels, are quicker to adapt. But then the drawback is maybe they haven't got the reach, the influence, the capital, like you said.
Exactly.
So I guess it's partly, it's being content's the wrong word. I mean that in a way of appreciate where you are in whatever business you're in and work from there, isn't it? If you're a sole trader, don't try and be Amazon next year.
No.
And if you're Amazon, don't suddenly try and adapt everywhere because you'll mess that up as well. It's being appreciative of where you are, but then having the thought and insight to where are we going? What do we want to do next?
Yeah. So there's two things though, right? There's smaller organizations are closer to customers, and the proximity to customers is the start of your innovation journey. The closer you are to customers, the more you understand them, the more time you spend with them, the more you observe them. As designers, people think designers are just the people that come in and, sketch a nice fancy solution. And, the phrase when I was in the design industry was, we're the felt tip fairies. We just come in and do a nice pretty drawing, and then someone else has the hard work. They have to go and make it. But if you really understand human-centered design or outcome-driven innovation, human-centered design is about really understanding people. So ethnography, human behavior, and smaller businesses have that proximity to customers that allows them to better understand customers. And more importantly, to better understand and observe and be able to spot problems. And your innovation journey fundamentally starts with spotting a problem or spotting an opportunity that then needs a really creative, innovative solution. And if you can then turn that into a business model and a revenue stream, that fundamentally is innovation, right? How do I find a problem? How do I solve that problem? And then how do I get it to market and build the business model and revenue stream around it? That's design thinking. And the start of that starts with understanding customers better than your competitors, and smaller business can understand customers better than the big guys. So you have two options. You either start small and scale because you've built something that the big guys haven't spotted, and you spot it, you build something, and that becomes your thing, whatever it is. Or if you don't want to scale, then corporates are desperate. They're absolutely desperate to partner and collaborate with smaller businesses because they know that they're closer to customers, because they know that they can spin up prototypes and spin up business models and pilots and experiments much better than the big corporates. So there's more opportunity from an entrepreneurship to spot something, build it and grow it, or get spun into an organization, or get bought out, or, there's so many opportunities. I think the challenge is, and I know I was guilty of this for a few years, we all think our ideas are brilliant, right? Every idea we have, it's the next best thing since sliced bread. And the challenge is, as entrepreneurs and as business owners, we tend to do that a little bit with our business as well. We think we're great and we think what we do is amazing. And, every time someone asks us, well, why are you any different? We articulate this big long list of, because we're this. And the reality is, what I realized really early on with the consultancy that I started to build was that at the point I thought we were different and I thought we were better and all that. And the reality was we were no different and we were no better than the next 20 design consultancies that I could name. So we set about changing that and we designed that difference. And as small businesses specifically, you have to be really clear on why you're unique. And if that's linked to your purpose, then move from there. And if you connect that with human-centered design and really understanding customers, those ingredients start to create something really special. And you'll either build something that you're able to scale, or you'll build something that a corporate will at some point be very interested in. So there's more opportunity to do that than there ever has been.
Yeah, definitely. That's really good. As you were chatting, I was thinking, we should just partner up with each other. You can learn stuff from the big guys, as you say, and from the small guys, can't you? And it's not being silo focused really, and just scared to reach out and maybe partner for different things.
Well, so the other thing as well is, look at what COVID's done. You might have two small businesses in a town like where I live, and there's so many new business models that have been spun up, right? Because businesses have had to adapt and they've had to survive. But what has come out of it has been two businesses that maybe never have talked together have realized that actually, if we combine what I do with what you do, 1 + 1 actually makes 3. This is really interesting. No one's doing that, but there's loads of people doing what you do, and there's loads of people do what I do. But if we put them together and add this little extra bit of sauce in, there's something really interesting there. And that's the way that economies will start to flourish, where, SMEs do partnerships and joint ventures, and they collaborate to solve a problem that one of them or either of them couldn't possibly hope to solve on their own, but collectively they can solve it, and that creates something really interesting. And the big corporates they're all desperate to partner with smaller, fast-growing startups or SMEs that do something, that have a capability that they don't. So, don't be afraid to look out for those partnerships. Anyone listening to this, if you're an entrepreneur or an SME, don't be afraid to approach those companies. Don't be afraid to look out for those opportunities, or even, collaborating with a supplier, or, dare I say it, wash my mouth out, as my mum would say, a competitor. Holy cow, collaborate with a competitor, that's madness. But it isn't, because sometimes if the goal is greater than the sum of the parts, the big corporates are collaborating now to solve stuff. BMW and Mercedes, arch rivals for over 100 years, but they're collaborating on new different business models now, because neither one of them can do it as good as they can alone. Neither one of them can do it as good as they can when they're together.
Yeah.
And the world now is built around collaboration and ecosystems, not individual businesses trying to go head to head for market share on an annual basis.
Yeah.
So think about different ways you can structure your business and partner and collaborate.
Absolutely. There's some wisdom in this last half hour or so we've been chatting. You've shared so many insights that I hope that people listening will pick certain bits will resonate more with certain
Absolutely.
people.
Yeah.
There's lots that they can just take and run with it. Hopefully it's got everybody thinking, how innovative am I? What's my blind spot?
Yeah.
And then get somebody else to help
but also like what's ahead, not what's behind us or what can't I see, but we talk about building strategies now in a very, very different way than corporates have built strategies since management design and management and leadership began. Typically you build strategies and you say, right, we're going to design what we're going to do for the next 3 to 5 years, and then starting on Monday we're going to implement that plan. We don't do that now. We build what's called hypothesis-led strategies. So what that means is, like, how far ahead can we genuinely see the world and see our industry and see consumer trends and all those things, and let's build a strategy to act in that time frame. Because building any kind of plan and implementing it in a time frame longer than that is madness. Because if we admit we don't know, we're not confident that the world will be the same in 6 or 12 months, why start implementing something now that's going to take 12 months to implement if we know 6 months in we're probably going to change direction?
Yeah.
So, it's about being aware of those blind spots, but also being aware of what you can see and what you can predict in a sensible time frame that says, well, I can see these things unfolding, or I'm going to take a bet that this will happen in our economy, or consumer trend will go in this way because of COVID or whatever. And you have to move in that direction. Otherwise, you carry on as a business on a linear path. And, the world's actually shifted a few degrees because certain factors have altered its trajectory. And that's how businesses go bust, because 12 months down the line, they've stayed on a straight linear path and the world's just gone off on a little curve. It's like they say, if a space rocket leaves the Earth and it's off by 1 degree, it misses the moon by 1,000,000 miles. And that's about relevance. That's what most companies have done. They've stayed on a linear, typical strategy path.
Yeah.
The world has slightly shifted, and then 5, 6, 7 years down the line, they've gone, oh dear, we're irrelevant. When did the world change?
Yeah.
And the world's changing all around us all the time.
Yeah.
And we have to build strategies that take into account that the world is changing much faster than it did 10, 20 years ago.
Yeah. And that takes courage, doesn't it? From a leadership perspective, really, to stay open that, hey, we haven't got it all figured out for the next 5, 10 years. We know where we want to go. It all comes back to the start of the conversation, isn't it? If you've got your foundation, if you know what you're able to offer and why you're in business, you will then find a way to reach the customer, won't you?
Yeah.
If you get too locked into, no, we spent all this money, this is the way it's going to be. Then, everybody's.
Well, I'll tell you what it comes down to, and I did a little recording for something called One Golden Nugget, which is a really cool website, and it's basically loads of people like me and authors and ex-CEOs and some really amazing people on there, and it's about, we just share a tiny little bit of wisdom and we share that little golden nugget. And what I shared on there was the point you've just made is a leadership. What's the word? It's one of the negative things about leaders. We are typically, traditionally, the leader, the director, the board, the CEO. They're the guys with all the answers, right? And it's one of the trappings of becoming a leader in an organization that there's a perception that you should have all the answers. And if your culture's even slightly off, what happens when that's the case is your employees, even though they're perfectly capable and able to do stuff on their own and be autonomous and do cool creative things and make great decisions, they wait for you to tell them because you're the one with the answers. And one of the most powerful things, but this is completely counterintuitive for how most leaders have been taught to lead, right? But it's the most counterintuitive, but the most powerful. It's incredibly valuable as a leader when you say to your people, when they ask you a question or they ask you what to do, that you say, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah.
Right? And there are so few leaders that go, I don't know. I haven't got the answer to this one. What do you think, guys? Team, give me your thoughts.
Yeah.
Because we're not, as leaders, we're not programmed. We haven't been taught to show weakness and vulnerability. We must have the answers. That's why we're a director. That's why we're paid 17 times more than the lowest earning employee and all those silly metrics, right? And we have to reinforce that as leaders. We've been taught to reinforce that on a daily basis. We're in charge. I'm a director because I'm the cleverest man in the room and I must have all the answers. And the reality is, in the world we operate in now, 20 years ago, that was probably the case, right? The world we operate in today, there are very few leaders on the planet that have all the answers.
Yeah.
The most powerful thing you can do as a leader is literally say, I don't know the answer to this one, guys. What do you think?
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. I think that's a really good place. We're kind of out of time anyway. That's a really good thought to leave everybody on. Maybe just as we wrap up, so for people that are listening, whatever point they're at, is the first step kind of get hold of the book, absorb and kind of read through and think about the things in the book, and then kind of have a chat with you about what the next steps would be for you to have input if they want it, or what's their best way?
So I would say, look, I'm never going to refuse anyone buying my book, right? But, not to turn this into an advert for the book, but sure. I mean, if there's any leader out there that says, you know what, I really want to, what is a culture of innovation? Like, what is innovation, right? And how do I build it? How do I lead for it? How do I foster and build that culture of innovation across my business? Then sure, the book is called Building a Culture of Innovation. And they can check that out on my website. It's on Amazon, just Google it, but they could go to chrisbeswick.com. There's no H in my name, though. That always throws people. So it's CrisBeswick.com. You buy the book. That just takes you to Amazon anyway. But sure, buy the book. But do you know what? There's so much. Like, just read up on this stuff. Read up if you're a leader. Read about growth mindset. I've written so many articles. Go on to my website or go on to one of the consultancies that I run, the guy called Dan Toma. It's called Outcome. So that website is outcome.co, not .com, so outcome.co. Go onto the blog section, the article section on there. Read all that. That's free, right? And that's about strategy, leadership, innovation culture, organizational design, all with an emphasis on how do we drive innovation. So just read up on it. And then, sure, anyone could connect on LinkedIn. Just Cris Beswick on LinkedIn. I'm super easy to find. Drop me a message. And if I can answer a question, I'll answer it. If you want to work with me, we can work together. But if it's just a question and it takes me 10 minutes to answer, then,
okay,
it's free.
That's really good.
I'd be glad to help.
Very generous as well. But also, it's helpful. There's lots of different stages that people can reach out and progress wherever they are. I think that's a lot, isn't it? It's starting, taking the step. You need to change. You need to take one or two steps, and then the next couple of steps then open up and become a bit more.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you for everything you've shared today. I'm certainly going to listen to this over again because I caught some of it, but there's more that I want to think about and capture again. So, and for everybody listening as well, hopefully you will do the same. Sure. Definitely have a look at Chris's website. There'll be a link below. So even if you don't spell his name correctly, you can follow the link below first off. look at his book, look at his site, see how he can help you. He certainly knows his stuff, as you can tell just from our short conversation today. There's lots of ways he can help you and skip a lot of the mistakes that you would make if you try and work it all out yourself. You'll know whether it fits for you. So yeah, I'll leave that in your hands, but definitely take some action, be proactive in some way to help yourselves move forward and stay innovative. So thanks again, Cris. We'll wrap this up for now. Hopefully maybe you can come back again and explore more of that on another episode. That would be good.
That would be my pleasure.
Brilliant. Okay, it's been great chatting with you. But for everybody listening, thank you for joining us. We will catch you on the next episode.
Thank you for listening to Yeukai Business Show. We will be back to bring you more episodes with success stories and advice straight from the experts. Want more? Check out www.yeukai.businessshow.com. Get your free trial of our virtual assistant service today. Just visit www.worldoutsourcingsolutions.com. Quote WOS18 or send us an email at support@worldoutsourcingsolutions.com.